Hello, YouTube. Thank you for joining the Yarn Live Show for your daily dose of fiber. I'm Selena Baca, founder, host, and lead educator with the American Crochet Association. And today I'll be your host for this episode of the Yarn Live Show. Normally, we also have Jess here. She's the founder of the Yarnpreneur Academy, but she is on vacation this week. So you just have me today as a host. Come on over and get tangled up in this fun, upbeat educational channel that's dedicated to the hanks, the skeins, the balls, and the cake that we love most, and to the people who, of course, make the most of them, because yarn is life. Season 2 is going to stream live every Thursday at 11. That is West Coast time. And for those of you who are on the East Coast, that is 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please subscribe to this channel and you will never miss an episode. Today's episode is sponsored in part by you great people who come on over here and watch. And what do we mean by that? Well, you can go on over and check out our Yarn Life swag shop to pick up a token tee, a tote, or a mug today, because every purchase that you make over there not only gives you great products that you're going to love, it also helps to create, sorry. Tech error. Every purchase that you make there not only gives you great products that you'll love, it also helps us to create more great episodes and bring on even more amazing guests. Speaking of that, let me change my background. This is the problem with going live, is sometimes our backgrounds are crazy. Yay, studios! Yay, live studios! So again, you can find that link in our show notes today so that you can go and snag some great Yarn Life swag. And if you guys do, if you snag any of those, come on over to our group. You can also find that group link in the comments. Go on over there and share what it is that you got. We have members that got tote bags or mugs or t-shirts, and we just love to see you guys strut your swag over there. So today we're, of course, into episode 2, season 2, we're, of course, into episode 5, and we're going to discuss teaching today. Specifically, we're going to discuss tips to teach children to knit or crochet with greater ease. Children, they have a lot of passion, they have a lot of energy, and they can be the perfect candidates to learn. They're like sponges sometimes. That's what we say about kids, right? So this episode is going to highlight ways that we can pass on our knowledge of yarn, of the yarn arts, in ways that can inspire and also motivate kids so that they will have a really fantastic introduction to the yarn craft that you're showing them. And hopefully they'll become lifelong learners. So if you're watching live or on the replay, come on over and comment on this video to let us know where you're viewing from. Let us know if you have any questions, and we'll go ahead and get to them as we see them. All right, we'll get to them when we see them. Yeah, come on over, say hey, say hello. I've got my screen up and I'll give you a shout out as soon as I see it after we kind of go through this. So before I give my 5 tips, my 5 awesome, amazing, fantastic tips that will help you teach kids to crochet with greater ease, emphasis on with greater ease, I do want to say that there is no magic age. There is no age that, kids are absolutely ready to not only learn, but adopt and absorb the yarn arts. You know your child, or you should know the child enough to know whether or not they have an interest, whether or not they're going to practice, they have the patience, they'll participate. So definitely take that into account. My rule of thumb is always, age aside, don't think about the age. If your child can sit for at least 30 minutes, if they want to learn, because it's really hard to get kids to do things that they don't really want to do, don't really have a passion for. So if they want to be there, and if they can sit for at least 30 minutes, and they can actually listen and participate in what it is that you're teaching them, then they're probably ready. You can start from there. Oh, Courtney's here. Courtney says, hey, so she gets a shout out. And Courtney says that she started teaching her girls when they were 10 and 8. And hopefully that worked well for you, lady. If you guys have experienced good, bad, happy, or sad, let us know in the comments. Hopefully some of our tips will help you. Just to give you guys some of my own personal experience, my daughter was 3.5, maybe 4. And she was like, what are you doing? Like, she had that interest. I'm crocheting. Oh, I want to learn to crochet. And she just I taught her and she just picked it up like it was already in her. So crochet just seemed very innate to her. But she could sit still. She had the passion. She wanted to do it. She's very motivated to do it. So that definitely helped. But that happened to be her age when she learned. Alternatively, my son's 9, and every time I think, yay, he's ready, because he definitely has an interest. He's definitely interested in what's mom's doing, and he wants to do it too, but he can't sit still. He just has to move too much, and he doesn't have the patience. So whenever I show him, he's like, no. So he's just not ready. So he has the interest, but he doesn't have the patience, and he doesn't really have the real passion to kind of pick it back up. Courtney's telling us now, she says it was okay. She says her daughters got it, but they didn't love it. She says, she says that she's hoping that they'll pick it back up. Well, hopefully Courtney or anyone watching, some of these tips here will help because, it's about teaching, but it's also about teaching them in a way that they're going to be motivated to want to pick it up, to want to do more, to want to learn more. So here it is, guys. Here are my 5 tips. Again, these are just my 5 tips from my own personal experience. If you guys have any tips, throw them out in the comments, all right? So tip number one, use a big yarn. Please, people, use big yarn. I'm going to personally suggest something like a weight 5 or a weight 6, something that's big and something that's bulky. Now, that large yarn, it's going to be easier for kids not only to hold on to, it's going to be much easier for them to use, much easier for them to see, and it's going to be easier for them to understand the stitches and the fabric that they're creating. Also, feel free to use a color that they like. So that's just going to help them get even more invested in whatever it is that they're creating, because they can kind of help with that creative process. However, I will say definitely show them options that are in the weight category that you choose. Remember, you want to stay within that 5, 6 weight category. So definitely pick a yarn that doesn't have a lot of texture, that doesn't have a lot of different colors going on. Stay away from variegated, stay away from self-striping may be okay, only if it's those really long gradients, because you don't want that to eat away and confuse the look of the fabric that they're creating. You don't want it to hinder this learning process. Also, keep it minimal ply. That way the yarn doesn't split and it's going to be easier to frog. Keep it simple. So find a yarn that you like in the weight 5, 6 category. And then if your kid's ready to learn, say, ooh, look at all these colors. Which color would you like to learn with? But again, don't show them colors that aren't going to work well. Don't show them like black or really dark brown or dark navy. Don't show them colors that are going to hinder the process. Maybe narrow it down to a good 3 or 4 that you think that they'll really like. So that's tip number 1. Tip number 2, this may go hand in hand with number 1, but I've got some additional insights for you. Of course, use a big hook. Now, we already know that we're using big hooks because we're using weight 5 or 6 yarns, but I will say we don't really know what the tension is going to be of your child yet. They may really have a death grip on it, a tight ninja grip, or it may be really big and loose and loopy. You're not sure. But, until you really kind of figure that out, and again, when they're just learning, you may want to use a hook or 2 size larger than what the yarn calls for that you're using to teach them. And again, that's just going to help so that the stitches they create, the chains they create, the loops that they create on their hook, they are going to be big. They are going to be a little loopy. Maybe not too big or not too loopy. You can always adjust, but you may want to start with 1 or 2 hook sizes larger because you really want to consider their tension. You don't want it to be so tight that they're fighting with it and they just immediately give up. They immediately feel frustrated. So just like giving your kids those big giant crayons whenever they start to draw, you know what I mean? We don't give them these tiny little pencils or tiny little crayons. We're going to give them big crayons. And typically it's those ones with the 3 sides, so they're easier to hold on to and easier to write with. The same concept applies. You want to give them something big and fun and colorful to make the work easier. Okay. Again, just like those big crayons, can you do fine work with that? Can you do fine, tiny details and shading and things like that? No, not really. But it's just about learning the motions. And then when you learn the motions, you evolve from those big giant crayons to fine pencils and finer tips and things like that. Also, just like the yarn, pick a fun crochet hook for them. You don't have to get them an entire set. That may just overwhelm them. You may just, again, get a big hook, with a big yarn, here's a weight 5 yarn that I have here, and I was just kind of working up some stitches. This would be a terrible color to use. Don't use this color, but it's what I had. Use a big hook. I know they don't pair well together, but it's something big and bright and colorful and very light that they can hold on to, and it's something really easy they can use, okay? There's not a whole lot going on with this hook except for it being a hook. And it's also very light because it's plastic, so definitely consider that. Don't get a big hook that's metal or aluminum, because this is significantly heavier, and you're dealing with tiny children. So the heavier the hook is, the more they're going to death grip it. They're going to hold on tighter to it, so their hand's going to wear out more quickly, and also their tension may really seize up and create really tight fabric. So go with a plastic hook, one that's big, one that they can't, even if they have a death grip, they're not going to break the hook, and just let them have fun with it, okay? If there's a variety of colors like blue or green or pink, let them choose the color, because again, that's going to help them get even more invested in what they're doing. All right, so that's 2 tips for you. Tip number 3, you guys ready? Yes, tip number 3? Okay, start with the chain stitch. That's it. You're not making anything. You're not making an Afghan. You're not making sweaters. You're not making anything. You're teaching them the chain stitch, okay? Now, I will say this. If they're going to struggle with the slip knot, because even adults struggle with the slip knot whenever they're learning to crochet, don't make them learn it. Do it for them just because you want to get them creating with the chain stitch. The chain stitch is actually you're creating fabric with it. You're turning yarn into something. That's exciting. That's a milestone. It's something you can count. It's something that you can see, ooh, it's getting tighter. It's getting more uniform. It looks more like mom's or dad's, whether dad's teaching or mom's teaching. So it's really motivating to do that. So again, don't make them learn the slip knot, especially if it doesn't click immediately. Just do that for them, because you can always teach them later on. You want to give them quick milestones, very small milestones, and that's going to help them really fine-tune their motor skills, just holding their yarn and holding their hook and working the motions of crochet. That's what you want them to do. So you want that to be fun and easy, and what's more fun and easy than the chain stitch, right? So you do this because you don't want to dump too much on them at one time. Here's a slip knot. You have to do this, and then we have to do the chain because that's how you build on it. Don't. We're just going to learn to chain because it's fun, and we're just going to chain forever, and it's just going to be lots of fun. Now, when I say don't dump too much on them, when they're ready to move on from the chain stitch, they will tell you. Alternatively, they may work the chain stitch and go, well, I did 5 chains, I'm done. They will, you'll understand, you'll be able to gauge their interest. If they want to learn more, if they're still excited, if they know that there's more, they'll tell you. And when they fine tune that chain after chaining for a couple days, then you can move on. Now, when you're ready to move on, tip 4 and 5 kind of go hand in hand, okay? You do kind of both of them together. Now, tip number 4 is use stitch markers. The sooner you can adopt stitch markers into a person learning to crochet, oh my goodness, the better. Stitch markers are life-changing. They are the holy grail of crochet, okay? These are going to help you count your stitches and to identify your first and last stitch of every row around. There are most adults who crochet who have no idea what the first and last stitch of the round is, or the first and last stitch of the row are. They have no idea if they're, oh, my chain counts as a stitch or it doesn't count as a stitch. I don't really know what that means. So the sooner you can understand that, and the sooner you can incorporate that by using stitch markers to identify the first and last stitch of a row, the first and last stitch of a round, the better you're going to feel as a crocheter, whether you're 5 years old or 95 years old. So with that said, this is going to assure, again, a lot of things. It's going to assure that the stitch anatomy and recognition are learned early on. What counts as a stitch, what doesn't count as a stitch. And remember, we want this to be a really fun, nice, relaxing skill that you pass on, whether you're knitting or crocheting. And if you don't know what counts as a stitch and what doesn't, if you don't know that as a teacher, your kids are never going to learn that. And if your kids don't learn that as they're creating projects, they're going to use you as a crutch to help them identify, where do I stop? Where do I start? Where do I join? They're going to ask all those really, fundamental questions. So if you don't have that figured out, you're not really teaching them everything they need to learn to be self-sufficient. All right, I have quite a few comments here, so let me go ahead and read them before I tell you guys tip number 5. Courtney says that she bought her kids each their own fancy polymer clay covered hooks. Aw, you know, I did that for my daughter too, a couple years ago, just to because I thought it would motivate her to crochet more. I bought her one with sugar skulls all over it, thinking, oh, sugar skulls, she's going to love that. She's going to crochet more. And it did, it worked a little bit. So having materials that excite and motivate you because they fit your personality, they fit your character and things that you like, I think that it definitely helps motivate. Courtney agrees. She says, yes, miles of chains. It helps because really, whenever you're learning to crochet, you're not just learning the stitches. You're not just learning to create fabric. You're also learning to hold a hook and hold yarn. And you're learning to do that in a way that's effective, that helps you create these stitches in fabric. So that's why that needs its own lesson time. That needs its own ability to grow and learn before you start piling on all these other stitches. And Courtney also says, yep, that she got her kids their own little pack of colorful stitch markers. See, Courtney knows. She's a pro. She knows all this stuff. And Amanda Pippin's here. What's up, lady? Good to see you. Okay, tip number 5, last but not least. And again, these are just my 5 favorite tips to have a successful start to teach kids the yarn arts with greater ease. So there's a million other things you can do, but these are my 5 favorites. Number 5, it has everything to do with the first project. It's my opinion that people make mistakes about what that first project is. And again, we're talking first projects, okay? A lot of times we go, what do you want to make? And they're like, I want to make doll clothes. I want to make an Afghan. I want to make a sweater. And wonderful, you can make all of those. But we're going to learn a few things first to help prepare you for those bigger projects or more complicated projects that you want to make. I'm glad you want to do that. We're working on it. Here's one more step to get there. Start with a washcloth in the half double crochet stitch. That's it. Start with that. That's the next step. You're holding your work, you're chaining, you're using a stitch marker. Excellent. Let's use that stitch marker and start our first project, which is a half double crochet washcloth. Now, why the half double crochet? Why are we skipping here? It's my opinion that the half double crochet is just enough motions and just enough height to learn crochet. Now, from there, you can always learn the single crochet stitch and you can always learn the double crochet stitch. Those are going to be very easy adaptations to learn and try after you try the half double crochet stitch. Now, when you've learned to chain with the larger yarn and with the larger hook, washcloths, typically made in cotton, let's say, and most cotton yarns are in the weight 4 category, especially if you're just going to your local yarn shops. So this is going to be the next step up in upping their skills, is using a smaller weight of yarn. So they've learned with 5 or 6. Now you're going to take them down to a 4 because they've got the motions right, okay? And now you're giving them a cotton yarn, which is it feels different. It makes, the fabric feels different. The stitches you're creating is different. It's going to slide on and off your hook differently. So those things are going to feel different. And again, that smaller weight yarn and the smaller hook is going to help them fine tune their motor skills even more so. Also, so that's why we're doing that with the stitch, but also we're making just a very small washcloth because they're learning how to chain and then work on top of the chain with stitches. They're using their stitch markers to mark the first and the last stitch of every single row. And then they're just going to create a few rows, 10, 12, something like that. And then they're done. They can fasten off and they have a washcloth. That's something that they can use. That's something they can give to friends. They can make as gifts. They can, it's okay if they make 10 washcloths because then they can use them in the bath. They can use them in the bathroom at bath time. You can use them as a kitchen, as kitchen washcloths. They have them wipe down the counters after they make their washcloths or something like that. So it's a great gift that's quick, that's easy. It's teaching them lots of things that are fundamental to crochet to really understand it. And then it's something they can immediately use when they're done. All of those things feel like milestones. All of those things are, again, not only going to help them to learn fundamental things in crochet, but it gives them all these little milestones that make them want to learn more. And it's also not this big job. I'm going to make an Afghan, and they make 5 rows. And then we have stories of women and men who say, I learned 40 years ago and I wanted to make an Afghan and I got 10 rows into it and then I gave up. It was just too big. So again, that's why you start with something small and functional, because it's there, they've learned it, and you want to give them these very small steps so that we can continue it. So now that you have some guidelines to teach your child or other children to crochet, I hope that you now have a template that will be fun for you to teach and fun for kids to learn. Crochet really is my passion, and I would love to see it pass through the generations in much better hands than we are finding it. So teaching the next generation in a way that's fun, that's easy to adopt, that gives children small milestones, to continue is just one way that we can assure that crochet continues through the generations. If you would like to have a better foundation in crochet and you would like to learn to become a crochet instructor with more, more of a foundation and more ease and more tools and resources, then come on over and join the American Crochet Association to begin with our 12-course learning program today. When you join today, you can start today. We are dedicated to helping crocheters to help themselves, and we have a really fun program to help you easily adopt crochet education into your life in meaningful ways. You can learn more and join today at AmericanCrochetAssociation.org. All right, one more shout out to everybody who is here today. It looks like Amanda and Courtney are just buzzing and chirping back and forth. I love it, ladies. Thank you so much for being here. So good to see you. And Courtney, thank you for sharing your experience. I can't wait to hear more experience from anyone who is here watching, or any tips alternatively. And please go through the comments as you're watching this on the replay and see if there's any tips that you can incorporate as well. So this concludes today's episodes. I would love to hear what you guys think. Can't wait to read more in the comments after the replay. Please join us again for episode 6 out of 10 for season 2. And that will stream live next Thursday as we outline another great topic for everyone who enjoys the yarn life. Remember, guys, today's episode is sponsored in part by you. Please check your Yarn Life swag. Our Yarn Life swag shop to pick up again that token tee, tote, or mug today, because every purchase that you make there helps us to create more great content, have more episodes, and bring on even more amazing guests. You can find that shop link in the show notes section today. Thanks again for joining this episode of the Yarn Life Show for your daily dose of fiber. Peace, love, crochet. We'll see you guys again next week. Bye-bye.